So, I'm back. Hi, everybody. I am posting a video for the first time in a while. If you didn't know, and this is randomly your first video of mine, I'm Pete. This is the Ponderings of Pete, and this is my channel that I've been neglecting for a time period, only so that I can come back. Right? The triumphant return, I would say. Maybe. I don't know. Is it triumphant? We'll see. That being said, like, comment, subscribe, listen to me throw up in my mouth, and we're fine. I do want to thank you all. I do genuinely, appreciate all your guys' support. I appreciate having people I can talk to about books, because that's just such an awesome thing. And I appreciate just how this community has pushed me to read more and all that wonderful stuff and the books that has been introduced to me by this community. So thank you, each and every one of you that I've interacted with and that watches my videos and, encourages me to keep going, because I think BookTube is a wonderful thing. That being said, let's talk about what I've been up to. We're going to talk about the books I've read. We're going to talk about what I've been going through in October and November. And we'll kind of start with that a little bit. What have I been up to in October and November? October was kind of just a slump month. I read, but I didn't post anything. I just wasn't really motivated to go out and do stuff, even though I could have. Even though I probably should put out a BookTube birthday tag, because I hit 2 years in October. I've been on BookTube for 2 years, and that's wild. That's really wild. And so there was a little bit of 2 years and I haven't hit 1K. Interesting. That was definitely a sticking point, I guess. And that was just a mental health dealing with where I'm at. Because I am someone who wants to do things and do them amazingly well. With no effort involved whatsoever. That's a mental tick in the back of my mind I have to struggle with. Me look, if you're not doing viral, it's fine. Enjoy where you're at. I think I've gotten it taken care of. We'll see. It's a continual struggle against that little voice telling me that, essentially. In November, I did something called NaNoWriMo, which was highly enjoyable to a certain extent and really hard for me. One of the things that I have kind of just come to the realization in my adult life of what I want to do with my life is I do want to write. I want to tell stories and create stories and experience the joy of creativity that way. Even though I happen to be an accountant, which is not what you would think. Somebody would be good at two of those things. They just don't jive well. I don't know. Creativity has always been my thing, really. That's one of the reasons why I did well in a lot of the classes that I did, was because I was creative. Not in the creative accounting sense that I'm going to find creative ways to do that. But there are certain, let's just say rote tasks that are much easier if you are creative, because you can find unique ways of accomplishing the same result that are infinitely faster. Going back to writing, my goal was to write 30,000 words. I did not hit that. I hit 27,000 words in a month, which for someone who hasn't written consistently since I was 14, that's a lot of words. So I count it as a victory that I was able to consistently write. Maybe not every day, but it was something that I was able to do consistently and get to a decent word count. Now, the trick, of course, is not just leaving that on the wayside and doing nothing about it, but actually continuing the trend of writing and world building and some other stuff. And maybe I'll talk about the book eventually, but I got to do some work on it first. It also is not going to be a short book. I got 27,000 words in, and I definitely was barely into the setup. I was into the setup, mostly done with the beginning, I think. Maybe starting to get into the middle parts. At least 100,000 words, I would think. At some point, I'll probably have to make it efficient. But I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. It's fine. I'm working on it. Overall, though, throughout this entirety of these 2 months, I did read. And let's talk about what I read. The first and probably the biggest books that I read, I think, ? Yes, definitely. Fool's Errand and The Golden Fool by Robin Hobb, who is a masterful storyteller. These books get back with Fitz, as I'm sure you know, because it's probably one of the worst kept secrets about, the Realm of the Underlings book is the specific character that you go back to from the first series reappears in this series. And, well, look, these books were really good. Let's just say that. Robin Hobb does an excellent job of just putting you into Fitz's mind and helping you understand the frustrations that he's going through. And you feel free to be frustrated with Fitz. Like, Fitz is a frustrating character because you're in his mind and you're seeing him make these mistakes. And we, as the logical reader, of course, are like, no, you shouldn't have done that, because we're not in the moment. But it's also understandable the mistakes that he makes. He is a very fallible main character. One of the most interesting things about this series is that sometimes Fitz feels like a side character, in the sense that in any other story, his role, the assassin's apprentice, the man, the king's man, he would be a side character. But Hobb has made his role in this world so much more as like this thing of just like greasing the cogs so that the king can get the thing and the queen can get things done. Any other series, the king, the queen, the prince, they would have been the main characters, but not this story. Fool's Errand is the first 200 pages of Fool's Errand are kind of like a warm blanket. You're kind of coming back to Fitz and getting to know where he's been for these years and what he's been doing, catching up with characters, catching up with old friends. And it's just great. Like, Golden Fool, of course, following up on the events of Fool's Errand. And both of these there's some plot elements with the Wit, which is one of the magic systems, that were really interesting, especially following up on the Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince, which is a history of the Six Duchies from way, way before, hundreds of years, that kind of tell a little bit about why the Wit is viewed as such a bad thing, such a disgusting thing. Like, people are like, oh my gosh, this is the beast magic and you can shapeshift and take advantage of our daughters. There's a really negative opinion of the Wit, and they really like to, they like to quarter people and then burn their body parts over top of water in order to make sure that stain of the Wit is cleansed. It's kind of intense. They don't really show that, but they mention it, and it's still intense. And so that is something that really weaves in as a primary thing in this series. In the very first series, the Farseer trilogy, it was cited as a reason why Fitz couldn't tell anybody about the Wit, but it wasn't really explored. This is a lot more just hey, one of the plot lines really delves into this and delves into this country's different sides of the perception of this. And I'm really enjoying it. There are also things that were left off in the Farseer trilogy that were left hanging that are really getting delved into in this series as well. So if you had issues with some of the plot lines in Farseer, specifically the threat to the nation plot, that you feel like they weren't really resolved well because there was so much focus on Fitz, I would highly recommend you read this so far. I'm reading Fool's Fate this month. I don't see why I would hate it, but we'll see. Check back in next month. The next one, Buddy Read with Anitha. Her channel will be linked up, down, below, wherever the link is pertinent, down there probably. Her and I have been reading a lot of books together, including Golden Fool and Fool's Errand, just because we happen to be reading them with a lot of people, with other people, with each. It's complicated. We just happen to have TBRs that are really similar. This is The Company by K.J. Parker. Before this, I had read The Folding Knife and Purple and Black by him. Purple and Black really gripped me. It was great. It's an epistolary novel about a dude whose basically college buddy put him in charge of a garrison up on the northern border of an empire after his buddy, who happened to be 13th in line for the throne, happens to become the emperor. And it was fascinating. It was a novella. I'm probably going to reread it as I read Academic Exercises, which I have started. And then I also have read The Folding Knife, which was a really interesting character study with Basso, but I think I think at some point I need to reread it because I don't think I enjoyed it as much as the next people that I've seen enjoying it a lot. I think it was good, just didn't really affect me. The Company, however, stuck with me. It's basically about a bunch of retired military dudes, one of which is a general who happened to acquire an island through various means. 5 or 6, these military gentlemen are just like, hey, we're gonna go live on this island. Or more accurately, one of them's like, hey, we're gonna go live on this island. And the other ones who were retired and having lives were like, okay, we're gonna go live on this island. And there's some douchebaggery. There's just people being terrible and what that gains them. This also continues KJ Parker's trend of just viewing the government or large institutions, I would say, as slightly inept. And slightly is an understatement. But I enjoy that theme, right? He portrays the military as a very manipulable institution, one that you can get a lot of things out of if you're corrupt enough. Anyway, The Company really just stuck with me as a tale of people being selfish douchebags. And they want something, they don't want something, the resentment and personal relationships going awry as the fractures that have formed over years have come to light. It was a really interesting book. The next one was a new release, and I technically buddy read it with a bunch of people, but I just read it. And that is Babel, or The Necessity of Violence. Something history of the Oxford Translators' Revolution. And this was a really good book. I do think that there were issues with it. Specifically, I feel like there was a lot of telling in this narrative when showing would have worked better. I won't say you should always show, don't tell, because I don't think that's that's not always the rule. We know this is about a dude going to Oxford, right? We know there's this guy who is from China who is arguably kidnapped, given a life, and he goes to Oxford now because of a benefactor. This is about his time in Oxford, leading up to the title. Necessity of Violence, Oxford Translators' Rebellion. You know that's going to happen. It's spoiled in the subtitle. So we go throughout his years of college, and there's a lot of telling. There's a lot of time skipping. There's a lot of, hey, they grew closer. Not necessarily a huge amount of showing. And then we get to the day, the hour, the moment, the rebellion. And she continues to do this, where she will skip over the interaction to tell you what happened and the result of it, when I think it would have been more powerful to show us that interaction and show us the conflict within these characters. And she'll just tell us the results and maybe have a few snippets of conversation, but not that much. It's definitely telling. And that kind of took away some of the punch of the ending, some of the punch of those final, those climactic days, essentially. Despite there still being a punch. Like, don't get me wrong, there was still a punch. I will say about this book, it is super thematic, right? If you don't know already, this is a very anti-imperialist book, right? This is talking about the horrors of the British Empire and what they visited upon, specifically China, in regards to, like, what our main character has been through. But, the British Empire. And that is represented by several different characters. I do think that the plot was remarkably predictable. I mean, considering we know where it has to go. If you're not down with the theme, you're not going to like this book. Like, straight up. Because I don't think you're going to like it if you're not interested at all in the theme. It's entirely possible that you could be like, oh, cool, this is cool. But if you're coming for the book for anything other than the theme, it's debatable whether it's really hit. It's going to be a super hit or miss for you. And it's more likely to be missed than anything. Connecting to the theme is a huge part of this book. Is this the central pillar of the book. I just wanted more from the characters, I think, in the end. I wanted to be more attached to them than I was. I wanted her to do more with the characters, because at times these characters did feel a bit one-dimensional. And then they had times where they shone a little bit more. But I think there could have been more improvement done to the characterization throughout the book. The next book I am going to talk about, or the next two actually, ending of a series. Yay. This was another buddy read with Anitha. Buddy read technically on Alan from the Library of Alexandria's channel. We started this months and months ago. This is Guns of Empire and Infernal Battalion, the last two books in the Shadow Campaigns trilogy. I say trilogy, but I really mean quintet or series, because it's 5 books. I finished the series. What did I like about this? What did I hate about it? Did I hate anything? I think similar to what Alan has told me in the past, the ending was kind of meh. I do feel like the specific climax of the book was unearned. Like, I guess you could see it coming. You could see some of the setup, but the setup, it just was... It felt very Deus Ex Machina. And it's a particular trope that I think can only work well once in anybody's life. For me, there was a particular series where this trope worked well, and every time I've encountered the trope since, this particular plot element, it has not worked for me. I will not tell you what it is because that would spoil the book. Conversely, one of my favorite characters in the series did not feel like he got a satisfying ending, a satisfying conclusion to his story. And it's definitely a series where I can say peaked at the first book, because a lot of the things in the first book did not transfer over the best into the last two. There were definitely moments where you could recall some of the highs of the first book, but this was also kind of a natural progression of the characters. The first book, our main character of Winter is on the front lines, and there's something uniquely electric about how that was written. As Winter was promoted through the ranks, that electricity was lost because she wasn't on the front lines anymore. And she knew things, and she planned, and she helped plan. And, there were ways that they kind of put that electricity back in there to a certain extent, but it never really captured what it was at. I think there was a different character arc that could have been done in the last book for Winter to make it an ending better. I think the character arc, Winter's character arc in books 2 and 3 could be condensed to one book, maybe. But her character arc in book 4 and 5 could definitely have been better condensed to one book. I felt like with her character arc, it was super slow. And to a certain extent, that's on me. Right. I've talked with somebody about this, and while it felt slow to me, it is also the character arc of someone who is dealing with a very toxic relationship, who is essentially emotionally abused. Like they're like Jane and Winter are very emotionally stunted people because they were in very abusive situations throughout their lives. They're traumatized people. The frustrating nature of their relationship is understandable. Doesn't make it any less frustrating. Especially in books 4 and 5. And that's about all I can say. I think I've said enough. Something I was supposed to do October, but I finished in November, was Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This is a phenomenal book. If you've read any Ray Bradbury, you should read this. This is a coming-of-age story for multiple people. This is super, I don't know if I want to call this, really good prose, but, it's really good prose. It's really good writing. Every other chapter, there's just a line of, oh my gosh, that's fire. The way he put that, the way he phrased that. The very much laced with metaphors and similes and stuff like that. of just like, hi, yeah, we're going to describe a thing in completely different terms. And it makes sense. Two boys, a circus, a very spooky circus, comes to town like at midnight on the 4th of October or something random. Not actually October. But both of these boys are born around the same time. One was born on Halloween. One was born on November 1st, within minutes of each other. And this is the story of their journey with the circus, which the circus is also very emblematic of just dark things in society. There are things about this book that I realize now that I'm like, that's an interesting opinion there, Ray Bradbury. Like, he doesn't like little people that much, I have decided, which is kind of weird. But outside of that uncomfortable thing, the book was really, really good. And it was about longing to be older, longing to be younger, longing to stay where you are, and just accepting where you are. And trying to be your best where you are instead of trying to be something you're not. Or something that you've lost, or something that you want to gain, and you do not know the price of it. It's just good. Go read it. Two more. The next one is The Lost Medal by Brandon Sanderson. Brando Sando, the man, the myth, the legend. I secretly wrote 4 books, and you're going to get them all through Kickstarter. Brandon Sanderson. This is the final book in Era 4. And I said Era 4, but I really mean Era 2, because that was a slip of the tongue because I was thinking about the secret projects. Lost Medal. There are good things, there are bad things. I did not expect much from this book going into it. Right? Looking back, I know there were some people who were like, oh, this is the first real ending he's gotten, the second real ending he's gotten to besides Mistborn Era 1. And looking at Mistborn Era 1 and the ending that is that, and the planning that went into that, like he wrote those 3 books together type of deal, and insane amount of planning to this series, which has taken almost a decade to write. More than a decade. The first one came out in 2011. It's 2022. It's a long time. I certainly didn't expect Mistborn Era 1 level craziness and coming together. And looking back on the rest of Mistborn Era 2, I didn't expect much out of this book. That being said, I was pleasantly surprised by what we did get. I think there were some emotional plot lines that concluded really well. There were also some plot lines that left a lot of threads hanging. In fact, I think that's the biggest thing about this book is there were so many threads left hanging. And presumably they're left hanging for Era 3. Because again, this was not planned. This was not planned to be a full story. It's just Brandon Sanderson was writing a novella to take a break from Wheel of Time, and then it turned into a book. It turned into a short story, to a novella, to a book, and now to a quartet. Because he needed a break from something. Which is fine. It felt a lot like a lot of setup. There were a lot of tiny things in this book. Details, characters, things that were really awesome. Because this is the first book that he's done with gloves off Cosmere. There were so many like Cosmere references and people from around the Cosmere and things happening that will definitely be important later. And I enjoyed that. I feel like he focused more on that than he focused on wrapping everything up. But again, instead of wrapping things up, he set up a lot of things. So I think there were a lot of storylines that I was unsatisfied with. Because there's just, and that's mostly because I feel like there's so much story left to tell. I think there's 7 epilogues in this book. It's very much hey, look, there's more story to tell. And this is what's kind of gonna happen. Not like amazing as a cohesive book, but amazing as a part of the Cosmere is what this book is. And I think something I'm going to have to, deal with. I think in the future, a lot of his books, specifically the ones in the series, Mistborn Era 3, Stormlight, Elantris 2, when that comes out, which might be sooner than you think, they are going to be this Cosmere hands-off. And I'm going to have to be okay with that because I love the Cosmere. But also I understand how the whole concept of Cosmere gloves off is intimidating because to a certain point it's like, oh yeah, you need to remember all these details. So I guess the popularity of videos being like, hey, before you read, you should remember these tiny things, is probably going to be more popular in the future, I would guess. Because the Cosmere is complicated over like as you read everything, and then you start getting it's a rabbit hole, guys. It's a lot of rabbit holes. I enjoyed it. That's for certain. And then the final book that I read was definitely Impulsive. Another buddy read on Alan at the Library of Alexandria's channel, because he was just like, hey, if you want to write political fantasy, you should read this. And he said that in a more generalized term, like, okay, anybody who reads political fantasy should read this. But I kind of heard like, dang, I need to read that. Augustus by John Williams. Phenomenal book. There are some quotes in here that are just absolutely amazing. And I'm not a quote guy. I'm not going to quote them to you because it's... because my accuracy of quoting is not good. Augustus. This is about, presumably, Caesar Augustus. Nephew / adoptive son of Julius Augustus. And starts shortly before Julius Caesar's death. This is a book that is told in the epistolary format, much like Purple and Black. It's a series of letters tossed back and forth between a bunch of people. This isn't just like two people like Purple and Black. This was important people in history writing these letters. And sometimes we got two perspectives of the same event, and it was just so cool. And Alan was right. Like, it's very much a, hey, they really hit the important parts about political fantasy, which is plots and people saying two different things. I think that's really the biggest realization I came to, of just like, you know, if I want to write something that is political fantasy like the book I am writing is, I'm going to have to put it where politicians say two things to two different people. And the reader has to figure out what's the real one, essentially. This is just what happens. You can talk to two different people, commit to two different things, and they both be cohesive with what a character's goal is. Everything is very murky. Make things murky. So, yeah, it was just really good. I want to reread it at some point because I think I'll get a lot more out of it, especially if I do like some delving into the history a little bit more, because this is historical fiction. So there was a lot of liberties taken. And the author admits this, but it was a beautiful book. Like talking to like Alan and a few other people, like the inaccuracies don't discount anything. And he fills in a lot of gaps because we have a lot of gaps. And it was still beautiful. Like seeing the character relations built up over like mere pages through a letter, and seeing these characters, like going to a random new letter that's like, oh, this is a new person. Who is this? Have I heard this name before? Is this new? Who is he? Is he a poet? Is he some random dude that's just in the war? The character writing was really, really good and efficient, right? If you just lean into it and let your imagination take hold, as like he gives you the barest details you need to connect with these characters. So you can connect with who they are. It's really good. However many out of however many you want to give them. That's the rest of what I read. This is probably going to be like a 60-minute video, 40-minute video probably. I don't know. Probably less. We'll see how much I can cut down. I don't know. Anyways, thank you for watching. That's what I read. Tell me what you think. Did you read these? Did you love these? Did you hate them? Up to you. But please discuss in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and just make sure to get some rest, guys, because that's super important. And again, I'll be back pretty soon. I hope. If I can get this Ken Liu thing edited and said correctly, because that thing. Bye.